Welcome to this is the final droidCon online webinar that we're doing this season. For any of you who've been around since the beginning, you know that we started in April. And when we launched this, we had an idea that we would divide this into topics. We had a series of multiple webinars on Jetpack. We had multiple on Kotlin, advanced Kotlin. We had multiple also as well on multi-platform. We brought in some folks talking about Flutter and Kotlin multi-platform. And sharing code base. And we also have had a series of what we call our hands-on and in-depth sessions. We've done a few more of those than the typical 3, and this is the last one. So we're really excited to end on a bang. We've got some great speakers today for you, and we're really excited about that. As you know, if you've been with us before, you know that I always keep my remarks short so that we can jump right into the meat of the discussion, but I do have a little bit of housekeeping we should take care of. As you know, in case for any reason you need to jump out early or have missed something in the past, you'll find all the videos on droidcon.com. You'll find the transcripts there. It's all searchable, and you should be able to reach those probably tomorrow when the videos will be up. So check back regularly at droidcon.com, and you'll find all the videos there. As you know, we always use Slido for Q&A. This is not something new. We've been doing it since April. You can go to slido.com and enter the code 93603, or if you look in your chat window, my colleague Uli is going to push out a direct URL for you to go there. So please don't use the question interface here and go to webinar. Go to Slido, use that. If you see a question that you think is important or something that you were going to ask, just give it a thumbs up, vote on it. That really helps to get all of the most important questions filtered to the top. So that's it for the Q&A portion here. We have a great lineup. We've got Tamas from Bitrise with here talking about speed up Android builds and fan out. That's the title of his talk. We've got PJ joining us from South Africa today, building a DevOps pipeline with Bitrise. Tamas is in Hungary, and we're really excited to have both of them with us here today. So as usual, what I'm going to do is take just a few seconds here and get this switched over to Tamas so that he can share his screen. And I'm going to disappear here pretty quick, and we'll let him take it away. So Tamas, feel free to turn on your webcam and your microphone, and we're eager to hear your presentation and see it. There we go. Okay. Take it away.
Thank you so much. All right. Yeah. So let's just jump into it. First of all, thank you so much for having us here. It's really a great pleasure to be a part of droidCon. And let's just jump into fan-out builds and Android build performance. So, of course, when you are building up the CI/CD pipeline, one of the main concerns is how fast you can get feedback from the system by still doing meaningful work during your CI/CD pipelines. To be able to do this, you would definitely be required to basically do a planning of how you are setting up your project as well, your test cases, and your whole CI/CD pipeline. So we are just going to jump into speeding up the builds right here. So one of many advices would be to simply just use the Gradle cache on Rise. This is always a quite time-consuming portion of the builds. So each and every time, for example, you would need to simply download all the dependencies that are used within your project. Gradle would be handling this, and after that, you would be able to create your APK, for example. The network access can be a pain from time to time, and this isn't just because you are using a CI/CD environment. And to be honest, using a hosted one could really work around any kind of network issues because, for example, we are having our data centers set up with, well, one of the best internet connections possible. But of course, it cannot happen on the provider side that there are any kind of network connection issues, uh, or even basically their hosting service goes down for, let's say, 1 hour or 2 hours. In these cases, Gradle cache can be pretty much useful because you would be able to simply just pull down the cache archive, for example, on Bitrise, and you would be able to simply use the cache dependencies and wouldn't really need to do any kind of network operations to download each and every one again. The next part would be using static dependency versions. Why would this be good? So quite often we see that people simply just specify the version of the dependency by adding the major version and allowing anything above that to be installed. This can also cause basically extra work time that wouldn't really be needed. So if you have a fixed version of the given dependency and you are using the Gradle cache, you would be able to work around any kind of network requests that would be happening in the background. So the system wouldn't be checking for any kind of newer dependencies. It would simply just go with the already existing one that is found in the cache, and it would be able to push down the time spent on installing these dependencies. The next part would be only including necessary resources. To bring an example here, let's say you are writing your UI test cases. Whenever you are writing these test cases, you would be either preparing for a single language, or you wouldn't really be using any kind of language dependent texts within your UI test cases, as in the best case, to be honest. So in these cases, you would be able to simply just push down basically the APK size and the build time as well by only including, for example, resources for a single language. For the UI testing part, most probably you would be only testing for a single device resolution. So you would be also able to specify which resolution you would like to be testing and only build the APK using these resources and assets. The next suggestion is not to use legacy multidex. So when is legacy multidex used? Basically, if you are setting the min SDK version to 20 or lower, it would be using the legacy multidex. So you would be able to specify basically a different variant, let's say testing, and you would be able to simply just change the min SDK version there. And the next part is about APK split. So disabling APK split during your test cases, or when you are running UI test cases, can also speed up the builds, basically time. And during the UI tests, you wouldn't really be using all the generated APKs, only a single one for running those. And the final suggestion would be to simply remove Crashlytics from UI testing builds. Whenever you are running UI tests, as a best case scenario, it would basically be behaving like, let's say, a device or an emulator that you already have hooked up to your Android Studio instance. So in these cases, you wouldn't really need to rely on Crashlytics to get all the device logs, to get back basically everything related to that crash. You would be simply able to use the debugging tools and, for example, use script to start up screen recording on the emulator, for example, via ADB. And just for this, you would be able to disable Crashlytics in these cases. And this is also speeding up the test process. And the next part is building your tests for success. So what do we mean by this? The main idea behind this topic is to make sure that your test cases are basically foolproof. So this would mean that you would have a well-defined plan for creating your test cases. Let's just stick with UI test cases in this case. You have those test cases organized well in separate groups, and basically you are making sure that these groups can work independently. So you wouldn't really need all the tests to be able to run right after each other. You would simply be able to pick separate groups as well and, for example, split up these test cases. Another part would be preparing for a different environment. Why would this be a required point here? Let's just think about hosted CI/CD solutions. So basically how Bitrise works is that we are creating a completely new virtual machine each time you are starting up a build. This would mean that there are no pre-installed tools, well, nothing that you would, for example, have on your own machine after developing for, let's say, months. And you would only have those tools which are already provided by the given virtual machine. This means that there is no APK installed on the emulator. There aren't any pre-ran test cases that are basically left over from the previous test runs that you were doing. So this would be a completely clean environment for you to test your application. This is, well, basically a really huge plus because you would be able to always test out how new users would see your application. And when you are building up your test cases, you would be able to simply go through the whole flow from the beginning to the end. What else do we need to take in consideration in these cases? Let's just get back to the network access. So for example, you are running your test cases within your office environment where you have server set up that the application is communicating with. So here, basically you are communicating through the local area network. And when you are running a build, let's say on the other side of the planet, and the emulators are starting up there, that would mean that the network connection and the data would have to bridge a much longer distance. So for these cases, you would need to make sure to leave enough time for the elements to be displayed, and also basically build up your test cases to make sure that the element that you would like to interact with are already displayed on the UI. So yeah, just to bring an example on how you can do that, for example. So when you are, uh, let's say, doing a login, as a very first step, you would need to make sure that all the input fields are present on the page and the login button. When all of these are present, and let's say you have 10 seconds of timeout for all of these to be displayed, um, you can start inputting the username, the password, and after that, clicking the sign in button. When that's done, as a first step, most probably you would be waiting for a loading indicator to be displayed. If it is displayed, that means that the login started. And after that, you would also need to make sure that you are redirected to the correct page. So either, let's say, the dashboard or the account settings page. In these cases, you would need to pick an element that you would be waiting on, and that would simply make sure that you are only interacting with elements that are already displayed. And also it would include basically a smaller threshold for uh, all of these elements and all of the network calls and all of the background operations to finish up. And let's just get to fan out builds. So what is the main idea behind fan out builds? What are fan out builds? Basically, these are builds that are triggered by other builds. So how would this look in practice? Well, basically, you would be starting up your build and you would be doing any kind of logic in there. Um, First step, you would be cloning the repository, installing any kind of dependencies, pulling the cache, and generating all the required files to start up your testing. And when you are ready to start, you would be simply just passing on the generated artifacts to other workflows that would basically do the heavy lifting for you. So all of these workflows would be simply running, for example, in what we are going to see, different test sets, and making sure that you don't have a single workflow, a single CI pipeline that would be doing all the testing for you. You would simply just have multiple spread out pipelines which are using the same artifacts but running different test cases. Yeah, and uh, basically due to this nature, on Bitrise, running fanout builds would require more concurrencies as well, because you are simply starting up separate builds. And let's just get to the fanout workflows. I'm just going to quickly show you guys how the workflow editor looks like and how our test cases are currently structured. So this is basically the Bitrise workflow editor. You can see here all of the steps that are running during the build. And you can see that I have multiple tests which are running after each other. All of these are, well, quite short test cases and quite short test sets. And to be honest, I was using the exact same tests for all of these. But you would be able to simply modify which test cases you would like to run or which test sets. Yeah, so let's just go through the whole workflow. As a first step, the AVD manager is creating an emulator on the virtual machine, and it is starting it up. After that, the activate SSH key registers the SSH key, the git clone repository clones the repository, the cache pool would pull down the previously mentioned Gradle dependencies. The next interesting step would be the Android build for UI testing. This step is basically generating an Android APK and the test APK as well. After that, I have the Android build step, which I would be using to distribute to my testers if all of my automation tests are successful. And after that, I'm just making sure that the emulator is already started up. Installing the APKs and running the test cases. So yeah, this would be quite easy setup of quite simple workflow. And I'm just going to switch to this one. So you can see it right here. This was the exact same workflow that I previously showed. You can see all the test cases. These aren't taking too much time, but of course, if I would have multiple test cases or if the development team would be working quite rapidly and creating new test cases as well, then these numbers could start growing pretty fast. And of course, instead of 40 minutes, having a bit shorter period of time to go through these test cases would be really good. So yeah. So how many fan-out builds to use? And yeah, this is quite a hard question in the sense that there isn't an easy solution. So it's not possible to say that, yeah, 6 would be the fan-out number that would basically fit everyone and would help everyone. And because of this, we also created a calculator. So you can see here the previously mentioned setup, basically. You would be able to simply just specify a build time, concurrency count that is available, and the calculator itself would be able to figure out what would be the best amount of fan-out builds to use to speed up the whole build workflow, the whole build process. Yeah, just going to go back right here. And let's talk a bit about the fan-out deadlocks. So a simple limitation is that you would be able to have a fixed amount of concurrencies on Bitrise on the public cloud plans. This would mean that, for example, in this case, you would only have 2 concurrencies that you would be able to use. How could we work around these issues? So let's say there is the primary build workflow that would be starting up 2 different workflows. And let's say that 2 different Git events happen that are triggering these primary workflows at the same time, just before starting up the fan-out builds. This would mean that the very first primary build A would be taking up one of the concurrencies. And right after that, primary build B would be started by another Git event. And basically, this would mean that we get stuck on concurrencies, and these fan-out builds wouldn't be able to start up. So what could be the solution in this case? So at the very first step of the primary workflow, it would be possible to simply just add a script step that would be checking the Bitrise API to see how many concurrencies are available and how many builds are currently running. This way you would be able to avoid any kind of issues by getting or hitting the concurrency limit. When the specific script step would see through the API that there aren't enough concurrencies available to be able to start up all of the required builds, it would simply just be able to restart itself. So you can call the API to start up a new build with the exact same parameters, and you would be able to abort the current build. And just to go back to the workflow a bit. So let's just have a look at how these look in the real life and during the setup. So you can see here that we basically have the exact same configuration right up until this point, where we are calling the Bitrise start build step. And this step is the one that is responsible for triggering specific workflows. Under the hood, it is also using the Bitrise API, and there is also an option to disable waiting for these started builds, meaning that you would be able to do some extra logic on the main workflow as well while you are waiting for the test builds to start up and finish. Just a really easy and uh, quite relatable use case of this. So you would be able to simply build the UI testing artifacts, the APKs that you would be testing later on, share it with the other workflows, start up the other workflows, and in the meantime, you would be able to, I'm just going to switch to this one. Yeah. So as you can see here, in the meantime, you would be able to use the Android build step, for example, to generate another APK that you would be sharing with your testers if everything goes fine. And when that build finished, you would be able to wait for the previously started builds as well, and basically collect all the artifacts that were generated by those builds. And let's just have a quick look at how these test workflows are working. So what happens is we are using the cache archive to share these artifacts between the main workflow and the testing workflows. And after that, we are using the virtual device testing step to run the tests on Firebase Test Lab. When the testing finishes, we simply just compress all the test results generated by that and use the deploy to Bitrise IO step here as well, so that the main workflow can collect it with the Bitrise wait for build step and download it to the TMP folder. Yeah, and just to show another example of this. So in this case, for example, you can see that I have 7 builds with the Firebase Test Lab solution, and I only have 6 builds for this UI test fanel. It was basically added to show another solution. So for example, you wouldn't really want to build a different APK while the tests are running. You would simply like to start up another instance of testing. So you would be able to do that as well, and you wouldn't need to have one build simply just waiting for the others to finish up. You would be able to have some kind of logic running on this build as well. And at the end, the wait for build step would be also collecting all of the artifacts generated by the previous one. And you would be able to see all of these artifacts thanks to the deploy to Bitrise IO step. Yeah. And we can jump to the Q&A session.
Great. Fantastic. We're going to have Uli change over as the moderator now, and he'll be able to show his screen with the slide of questions that have come up. Okay, fire away.
Okay, so which Gradle files should be cached? Gradle / caches and Gradle wrapper is enough. Anything else that should be cached? For builds running on Bitrise, the easiest way is to simply use the built-in steps. So in the workflows, you could see that I was using the build for UI testing step, for example, and the Android build step. On Bitrise, these pre-built steps are already generating the specific cache paths, so you wouldn't really need to add any kind of path to those. How do you disable the new Crashlytics UI tests? With the old Fabric SDK, we had text enabled Crashlytics Gradle parameter. It is gone now. Yes, exactly. Just a second. Oops. I'm just pulling up quickly.
Should we have you show your screen, Thomas? Do you need to?
Yeah, first off, I'm going to post it right here. I think this would be enough. So there's the set Crashlytics collection enabled false that you can use, and I also linked. Oh, perfect. Okay, yeah, sorry, I sent it wrong. Thank you. So you can see the reference there as well on the documentation. What's the difference between the pipeline steps Android build for UI testing and Android build? So by default, the Android build step would be putting together the Gradle task that you would like to run based on the specified variant and module. So let's say the module is the app one and the variant is the debug. And in this case, the step itself would assemble the Gradle task that you would like to run, which would be the app assemble debug. For the UI testing, you would still be specifying the module and the variant, but it automatically adds another Gradle task. So not just app assemble debug, but app assemble debug Android test as well. This would be generating two different APKs, and these APKs can be used to run instrumentation tests. Are there plans to add more emulators to the Firebase UI device test steps? Yeah, so basically on virtual device testing for Android, you would be able to use all the emulators that are provided by Firebase Test Lab. So you can feel free to collect all uh, all the devices that you can find there. The step itself should contain the latest versions, so we are checking that from time to time. But yeah, as soon as Firebase adds a new device, you would also be able to use that on Bitrise using the virtual device testing step as well. Is there a resource example script to use the launch UI tests in a script? Yes, so you would be able to, for example, search for Android fanout and Bitrise, and you would be able to find our blog post that basically contains the Bitrise YML of the shown example as well. The only thing that you would need to take in consideration that already there were some updates to the wait for build step that allows us to basically collect all the generated artifacts from the started workflows. So you wouldn't need to add the collect artifact step to the fanout workflows. And there you would be able to see the exact command. It should be, I'm just checking real quick. Yes, so it should be the ADB shell AM instrument, and there you can specify the test runner and the test package as well, just to have it in short as well. And just going to quickly post here as well. Oh yeah, sorry, that was for the organizers. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so that was the example that I used in the sample app that I was showing. And yes, I was using DuckDuckGo as the test project. You're welcome.
Well, good. All right. Well, thanks so much, Thomas. I really appreciate it. It was great having you here with us. We look forward to seeing you. You're going to be back again in about 2 weeks' time at droidCon EMEA coming up. We hope we see you there. And I know PJ's too. So we will say good night to you, Thomas. Thanks for being a part of this. We enjoyed having you. And we'll ask you to mute and turn off your webcam. And I'm going to turn the time over to PJ here. We should be able to see his screen here in just a moment. We'll get him started. If you're still, you can still use the same Slido window that'll reset, and you can ask all of your questions for PJ after his session. So let's have you turn on your webcam and your microphone, PJ, and we'll hopefully get started with you now. There we go. Take it away. It's all yours, okay?
Hey, can everybody hear me?
We sure can. Yep, you just need to full screen your
Okay.
slides and good to go.
Okay, awesome. Cool. So let me do that. Awesome. So hey everybody. Hope everybody's well and keeping safe out there. I'm Peter John Welcome, or PJ, and today I'll be speaking about building a DevOps pipeline with Bitrise. If you want to get hold of me on Twitter, I'm at PJ Apples. That's kind of just a random alias of mine. Yeah, cool. So just a little bit about me. I am a freelance mobile engineer. So I work on various projects. I'm also a Google Developer Expert for Firebase. So if you ever have any questions about Firebase, you can always let me know, and hopefully I can help you. The stacks that I kind of I love working on is Android and iOS, a little bit of machine learning, Firebase, and Google Cloud. Two things that are random about me is that I also have a podcast called Talking with Apples, where I speak about mobile development with a bunch of community members. So if you want to listen to that, check that out. And another thing is that I really, really enjoy photography. So this was just a bird that I took that a photo was taken of recently. My wife. We went out to safari. So that's really, really great. But I mean, you guys don't really want to know about me. You guys kind of want to know about CI/CD DevOps pipelines. So let's jump straight into that. So pretty much when I'm talking about a DevOps pipeline, I'm talking about CI/CD. So I just thought I would mention that just in case there's anybody that's new to CI/CD or DevOps pipelines in general. But I mean, what is CI/CD? Or what does it actually do for us in terms of developers? Or how does it actually help us get our code or our process a lot better? So what is CI? So obviously this is going to the source of truth, I guess, which is Wikipedia. And it's continuous integration with development practice that requires developers to integrate code into a shared repository several times a day. Each check-in is verified with an automated build and allows them to detect problems early. So CI is a very important process if you are working in teams to make sure that that code that's being checked in every single day is really is at a certain quality, that the code actually builds and there's no errors. Maybe somebody missed a semicolon somewhere if you have a language that has semicolons, or just anything where the code might have actually broken or something like that. So we have a whole bunch of automated builds, and then it also helps detect a bunch of problems earlier based on what you actually add to your CI. So we'll go through a little bit of that a little bit later. And then what is CD? So CD is actually two different, there's two parts to CD. So there's continuous delivery. Again, the source of truth, which is Wikipedia, is an extension of CI that makes sure that we can release new changes to our customers a lot quickly. The delivery part, though, is where we kind of automate this whole process, but we still have some kind of human interaction at some point where someone needs to click a button to actually deploy it at the end. So that's what continuous delivery is. But continuous deployment is pretty much exactly the same as delivery, just with the practice of everything is kind of automated. Everything is automated all the way to production, and there's no human interaction or intervention in this specific process of a CI/CD pipeline. And the only thing that can prevent changes from actually going out to your users or your customers are pretty much a failing test at some point. So this is kind of, I found this diagram and I thought it was really, really cool because it kind of just shows the development process of where CI/CD kind of like fits in. So you as a developer would write some code, maybe you're using some kind of branching structure or strategy, and what you would do is that you create a branch, you'd write some code, and then you would kind of push that to a server, push that to your Git server or something like that. Then what would happen is that your CI then will get triggered and will run a bunch of automated tests and builds, and that will actually go through your code, run your code, decide, run linters, run unit tests, and all of those type of things. From there, if all your automated builds go great, you can have reviews from your colleagues then that will then do peer review or pull request reviews, and they will either approve it or not. But well, what helps here is that that there's a whole bunch of automated tests also that helps the reviewer to say that can give them kind of confidence in also approving and being able to merge the specific code. So you'll get that, you'll review it, and And even at this stage, there's a whole bunch of like you could create like automated review bots also that could jump on your continuous integration also and actually review pull requests and actually provide feedback on your pull requests. Those type of things can also be added at this point, just to help that specific process. And then once the code actually gets merged into, let's say, a develop branch or master branch or main branch, it goes through the continuous either delivery or deployment step where it will then create a build. It will maybe do some automated UI tests and to make sure that everything is all good over there. And then it might either deploy this to beta users or deploy this to your production users, or even just to testers, your QA, your QA engineers that will actually be testing this application. So there's obviously many CI/CD platforms out there. There's a bunch of them. You can obviously run a lot of scripts on your own machine if you kind of like want to do that, or you could use like an online platform. And there's a whole bunch of them as you can see here. They all provide different services and different ways of obviously doing CI/CD. Obviously today we'll be talking about Bitrise, but I have done talks previously about doing specific about using CI/CD platforms and how which ones are actually cool. There, I also wrote an article at some point. If you're kind of in a situation where you don't know what CI/CD platform to use, I wrote an article pretty much saying, kind of going through the pros and cons of all the CI/CD platforms that I mentioned on the previous screen. I had the opportunity at some point about 2 years ago where I did a POC for my team on CI/CD platforms, and I literally went through every single one of them and kind of had the opportunity to see the benefits, what would work well and what wouldn't work well, and how it would benefit our teams. So you can go and read this article. I think it will give you a great perspective of what to kind of expect from each platform, and then you can pretty much figure out which one you'd like to choose. But today we're obviously going to be talking about Bitrise. So I like Bitrise. It's a really great platform. It's also one of the platforms that allows you to have, and so because I'm a freelance developer, obviously I do Android and iOS development, and Bitrise was just one of those platforms that allowed you to do Android and iOS for free up until a certain point, and then you would have to pay based on your build time and stuff like that. But it was just cool to like kind of like play around with and make sure which platform was great. So like I really liked it, and I think it just became a lot easier for me to use. So we're gonna be using this platform. There's a whole bunch of great ones out there also, but like Bitrise for me, just the user experience was really great. So that's also why I'm kind of doing this talk to kind of give you the same experience that I had. So what we're going to try and do is we're going to try and build a pipeline, a CI/CD pipeline in 20 minutes. So I'm going to try it. I've obviously tried it before, and the time did get a little bit closer. Maybe I can go a little bit faster, and hopefully we kind of don't go over time. But this will be kind of like from an introduction. So if you've never ever done CI/CD before, I'm gonna start off with a blank project, just a blank Android project that I just added to GitHub, and then we'll kind of go and try and get our first green build, which is going to be cool. And then from there, hopefully we can get to a situation where we can also then have multiple steps, multiple workflows, and we'll kind of go over all of those things at the end. So just a few things to know before we get started. Like I mentioned, the Android app, I've already set it up. It is on GitHub. I'll send the links out later. You guys can go check it out. And I've also set up a Firebase project because I'm going to use app distribution. I've set up Fastlane also in the project. Because I think Fastlane is a really, really cool tool that helps with easier distribution. And you can actually run Fastlane lanes within Bitrise, which is really, really nice too. So if you want to do that, I've kind of just set that up. And then I've also set up Jacoco for code coverage in the Android application. And then our goals at the end of this whole 20 minutes is hopefully that we get a green bold. We can set up multiple workflows, and I'll show you how to do that. We'll have our linters and unit tests running. We'll also do custom branch triggers, and we'll archive our app and we will push it to Firebase app distribution. And then I'll also just speak a little bit about pushing it to beta to the Play Store, and we'll kind of just go over a little bit of that. Cool. So let's jump straight into it. So over here, this is my blank project on GitHub. So as you can see, 1 hour ago, I just went into Android Studio. I said file new, and I just created a project. And I was like, this is okay. This is just a Kotlin project. The application ran the Gradle, and then I just pushed the code. So there's absolutely nothing here. There's no code inside of it. It's a blank activity. There's pretty much not much happening here. So generally when I start a project, as you can see over there, so generally when I start a project, I tend to create the project and create create the project itself and have all of like kind of the metadata and all of that stuff like ready. Maybe create like a small little README and stuff like that. But then I automatically then go and I don't ever start writing code. I first set up a CI/CD pipeline just so that I know that I have something that's also checking me all the time when I actually start writing code. So I always think that this is quite a great approach to starting a new project, if it's a side project or if it's something that you're doing for a client or whatever. This is always a great approach to kind of take in this aspect. So I'm going to go to Bitrise, and so this is Bitrise. If you've ever been on Bitrise, you can pretty much create a new. You can pretty much go at the top here. You can click on this, and you'll see over there it says you can create a new app with a web UI. So that's what we're doing today. Bitrise does have a CLI, which is really, really great because you can actually run your Bitrise builds on your machine if you want to, and you don't have to run them in the cloud. But obviously, I prefer to run them in the cloud because then obviously great internet connection to the server, and there's a bunch of caching and all of those stuff that happens also, which is pretty cool. So I'm choosing my account over here. I'm selecting the privacy of the app. So like previously, Bitrise only used to have it as private, so you kind of had to be part of an organization or you had to be part of the app to be able to see like logs and all of those type of things and configurations for the application. But they then made the public version. They made it so that if you had like an open source project, you didn't really need to be part of the organization or something like that to actually go look at the logs if there was a build failing or something like that, or if you were trying to do some kind of contribution. So this is really, really cool. So I'll click that. For now, this is going to be our blank project. So what it's going to do is it's going to ask me for GitHub. I'm going to go to my personal over here. I'm going to click blank project and go away from this. And then it's going to ask me what branch would I like. I'm going to say the master branch because it just created the master branch for me. I'm going to go next. And what it's going to then do is it's going to actually create a Docker container where this where my build is going to be running in. So we'll kind of just wait for that to happen. It should be quick. So now it's going to scan the project. So it's gonna try and find what type of project it is. So it could be an iOS project, could be an Android project, could be a Flutter project, and all of that. So as you can see over here, as we get down here, it actually says it's now detected an Android project, which is great. There's an app over here, so this is just the app module. I'm going to click next. I'm not going to specify any kind of variant. And I'm going to just say, cool, I would like to confirm that this is the stack I would like. So it's going to be running on an Ubuntu machine. Obviously, if it's an iOS application, it will have Mac OS here. So you can run that, and it will just kind of tell you the stack that you're going to be running on. So generally, also you can go and change that stack if you really want to, like especially when you have let's say iOS builds, like you might need a certain version or something like that. Whereas most of the time on Android, you kind of just use the same stack, and it works really, really well. So we're going to create that. Then it's going to ask us, do we want an app icon? We're just going to go with whatever it gives us, choose and proceed. I'm going to ask it to register a webhook on my GitHub project, which is, it's going to then register that specific webhook. So then what we can do is that it will kind of kick off a build. It will kick off builds in PRs and all of that. And now I'm actually going to kick off my first build. So what it's going to do is it's now going to go to that master branch, and hopefully it's going to run, and we hopefully get our first build that is going to be green. So let's just wish ourselves luck, and we'll come back to this in a bit. So what I want to do is I want to take you then to a demo project that I've created. So this is again another blank project. There's pretty much nothing in it. The only thing that I've done is I've created a Jacoco Gradle task over here for unit tests. And then what I've done is I've also just added Fastlane to the project. There were some keys and stuff that are obviously still on my machine, so I'm not going to upload those. But pretty much it's just like Fastlane is a really, really cool tool. So you can kind of go and check it out. There's a fast file. You can run pretty much a few things on there. I'm probably going to like delete a bunch of like the stuff that it's connected to once this is done. But this is pretty much the demo project. Again, a blank project, but we have a few things that are already set up over here. So I'm going to go to the specific project. So you'll see this is the CI/CD project that I've created for that specific application. So there was a few failed builds and there's a few successful builds. So we'll kind of go through that. And what you'll also see is that you'll see different workflows over here. So Bitrise has this thing called workflows that we're going to go through in a second, and you'll see which workflows are being run for which specific build. So we'll get through that. So let's jump into the workflows. So the workflows are something that's really, really important. So let's just wait for it to load. My internet's not doing me well today. Hopefully it will. Cool. So Bitrise has a bunch of workflows. In the previous speaker also spoke about it and showed quite workflows. But what I wanted to show was what workflows are great for is that you can kind of create different builds, or you can create a different workflow with different steps with different triggers that actually trigger these specific builds. So we'll go through that. So as you can see, there's this SSH to try and get the SSH key. We're going to do git clone. We're going to do caching. We're going to so this is off the bat. A lot of this is off the bat. You'll get the SDKs. So it will fetch all your Gradle dependencies. And then already one of the things that we want to do is we want to be able to run an Android linter to make sure that we're kind of abiding by the Android lint rules. So there's a step for this. So steps are really, really cool. So what you can do is you can just click on the plus sign at any point in the specific workflow, and it will come up on the side over here where you'll just have a bunch of steps that have been created. And this is really nice because it's really interactive. It's really easy to use. In my opinion, they tell you what's new, all the ones for testing, all the ones for deployment. If you want to deploy to the Google Play Store, um, and if you want to send notifications like Slack notifications or whatever, you can kind of do that. And we'll tell you all of the ones for Android. And if there's others that you're looking for, other steps that you don't see that are specifically for Android, you'll then be able to go to all and you'll be able to access all the steps. So there you can see I can send a Slack message if I really want to at the end of my build. So over here, what we have is we then have the linter and we have the unit test, and we can just kind of add these to our specific workflow, and that will kind of take care of running the linter and making sure that our app is looking good in terms of lint rules. And if any of these steps actually fail, the whole build will fail. Then we then have unit test over here. So this will then run Gradle test, and it will then run the unit test, which is really great. And then have CodeCov. So CodeCov is an external tool that you can kind of like, it will show you your test coverage of your application. So I just have CodeCov. I've added a CodeCov step here. Then we have Android build that will then build an APK. This is really cool because you can also specify if you want an APK or if you want an AAB, depending on what you want. I want an APK because Firebase app distribution doesn't support AABs yet. They only support APKs. So that's why I'm building an APK over here. And then you'll get your parts at the bottom of where these things are actually going to be. So that's really cool. And then I have a Firebase step over here where for apps distribution, and this kind of just puts gives me allows me to put my token in there, and I put an ID in there, and I'll be able to then deploy my specific I'll be able to deploy my specific APK to Firebase later. And then obviously I can still deploy it via Bitrise that will then send me an email of the specific APK, which is quite cool. And then I have a completely different workflow for where it actually signs the application and all of that. Does most of the same stuff, but signs the application at the end and then deploys a signed version of the application for the deployment step, which is really cool. So that's pretty much workflows in a nutshell. There's a bunch of things that you can add to it. And what's great about this is that as you actually adding things visually from the UI, it's actually creating a Bitrise YAML file for you. And most other CIs kind of make you kind of write the step for you. While they write the YAML files for you, want you to write the YAML file. Which can be fun and not fun at the same time. But Bitrise kind of does it for you through the specific UI. And if you do want to, recently I did see that they now allow you to actually add your YAML file to your specific repo. So previously it would just kind of live on Bitrise, but now if you actually want to kind of like change it and add it to your repo and put it in kind of like a source control thing, so that you can say, cool, you have different versions of it or something like that of your specific workflows and all of that. You can now do that, which is really great. It also has a whole bunch of environmental variables and secrets that you can obviously for like keys and stuff. So the CodeCov key, my Firebase token key, there's environmental variables, and something that I also wanted to get to show was that you can also create custom triggers. So whenever anybody pushes to the master branch, it will then kick off certain workflows. So it will kick off a deploy workflow, or it will kick off if everybody creates a branch that's feature slash anything, it will then do the feature workflow. So what you can do is you can have a whole bunch of different workflows for different scenarios. If it's a bug, then you could pretty much say, I'm going to add a trigger over here, and I can say bug slash anything, and I wanted to run the feature workflow, and I can just click done. And whenever anybody creates a branch that has bug slash any has a name, then it will pretty much kick off this specific workflow once it's been pushed. You can also do stuff for specific pull requests, so you can run different workflows if someone is doing a pull request for a specific style of branch. And then you can also run different workflows on tags. So if you're tagging your Git repo, maybe for a release or something like that, as soon as you push those tags, it will obviously then trigger a specific workflow for you. And then I'm going to say, I guess I'm going to just save discard whatever I did. I'm then going to go over here, and you'll see that then you can kind of see the actual stack that it's using. You can choose if you want something completely different, if you want to run it on Xcode or whatever, or if you need Xcode or Visual Studio for Mac or whatever, you can kind of just choose your stack that you actually want to run your specific application on. That's kind of it in a nutshell, the Bitrise workflow, and this is really, really cool. So we have created all those steps, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to create this README file so that I can kind of create a pull request, and I can kind of just show you how this works. I'm going to leave everything as it is, and I'm just going to create a feature branch. So this is me adding a new feature to, and I'm going to call this README. This is all for demo purposes, of course. And I'm gonna leave it as create README, and I created a README. Created a README. Cool. So then I'm gonna say propose the specific file. It's then gonna go in and says, cool, you're gonna open a pull request. I'm gonna say yes. I'm gonna assign it to myself. So you can all see the diff and everything, and I will then create this specific pull request. And as you can see, as soon as I do create that, you'll see that the Bitrise builds then show up in GitHub, and this is that webhook that I spoke about early on. It will then show the builds, and you can actually make these builds be kind of compulsory, where people won't be able to merge your specific pull request without these builds actually passing, and a whole bunch of other things. So we'll kind of wait for that, but let's actually go back to our blank project and look at that. We have our first build. So it's successful. It went through all the steps, and we have a green build, which is pretty awesome. So it's literally that easy in order to create that specific to start off with Bitrise, but then actually getting into it and creating your steps. This will obviously run for a little bit, and eventually it will be successful, and hopefully deploy our application to app distribution for our QA engineers at some point to come and look at this and try it out, and like see that the blank application that we created is working perfectly as expected. So I will come back to this. I'll just let the build run for a bit. It shouldn't be too long. I'm only running one build at a time, but it's pretty much running. It should be probably, it seems like the builds are like between 4 to 5 minutes. So hopefully by the time I end, we'll kind of be done with a specific thing. So I guess that's almost my 20 minutes of creating a CI/CD build, and also just going through the workflows with you. It's just me clicking a bunch of things and adding a bunch of tokens for external services in order for me to be able to work with them. And so that's pretty much us reaching our goals. We got a green build. I showed you multiple workflows. We're at the linter and the unit tests are running at the moment. I showed you custom branch triggers, and then the app is going to be archiving and deploying to Firebase for now. There are Fastlane steps also that will actually be run, but I can only run that on my machine because I didn't want to put that in my Git folder. Cool. So back to the slides. So that's our goal. And we're done. We've added CI/CD to our project, which is really, really great. So pretty much, there's just a few references. in terms of the article about building and choosing building a DevOps pipeline, but also choosing what pipeline to what service to be able to use. Bitrise has a great blog where they frequently speak about things that are happening on Bitrise. And then Fastlane is a really, really great tool to help you with CI and help you with builds and actually getting your application running quite well. It works. It was initially for iOS, but it works really, really well on Android now also. They've created it for Android, and it works really, really well. And I think it's a great tool to use. So in combination with Fastlane and Bitrise, it actually works well from my past experiences. And yeah, what I wanted to say was thank you for having me, and I will pose to any questions at the that come through.
Well, thanks, PJ. That was actually, it was a really great demo. I loved actually seeing just how, within the 20 minutes, you could set up the complete DevOps pipeline, walking us through all the steps. It was really cool to see. Really appreciate that.
Yeah.
I'm watching our Slido account right now, and it looks like we don't have any current questions, and that it's not surprising to me. Typically on a walkthrough like that, you were very detailed, and we can see exactly what you're doing. So that was really, really fantastic. If anybody has the last minute question they want to sneak in, great. We've got a few more minutes, and PJ can take any questions. Otherwise, we'll be
awesome.
Yeah, I was just signing off. Anyway, great. Well, let's do that. We're going to sign off now. This video, I think, is going to be one that people are going to want to go back and watch to get a really good, concise overview of how to set this up in about 20 minutes. The article's good. It's published on Pro Android Dev. I read it. It's really informative. So, PJ, thanks so much for being with us, to you and also Tamas, and also all of the people who attended this particular webinar. This is our final one of the season, and it was good to wrap it up on a bang. So we're really excited about that, and look forward to seeing everybody in 2 weeks' time at droidCon EMEA. So we'll sign off now and appreciate everyone who was involved, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon. Take care, and everyone stay safe and stay healthy. Thanks, PJ.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.